This video is brought to you by PrizePicks. I think we have underrated two of the best wide receivers in this class. As much as we talked about Carnell Tate and Monroe Freeling, and I like both of those players, and I like Monroe Freeling a lot. I did a film breakdown on Monroe Freeling. Feel free to check that out. I'm also going to do one on Francis Mauigoa. Make sure you say subscribe for that. As much as I like those players, I think that Makai Lemon and Jordyn Tyson should be more of the more a part of the conversation about what the Browns do, maybe not necessarily at 6, but with their first selection in this draft than they are right now. Especially Makai Lemon, especially Jordyn Tyson, right? I think these guys have been kind of overlooked. Now, why do I think that these guys have been overlooked? One, I think people got obsessed with the whole injury thing with Jordyn, which is a thing, right? He has gotten injured a lot. The question you have to ask with Jordyn Tyson's injuries is there a connective pattern here that suggests a chronic issue with Jordyn Tyson, or is this just bad luck? Because bad luck can change, but chronic health issues tend to not change, right? They tend to be static problems for people. When you look at the way that Jordyn Tyson has gotten injured, it's definitely more in the bad luck case than the chronic issue. They looked at his knee at the combine. It checked out. They didn't see any kind of long-term damage to his knee. They're pretty happy with it. Honestly, like, there are other guys who have bigger health concerns long-term than, like, Jordyn Tyson, right? Like, Jordyn Tyson has had injuries, but he doesn't have a chronic issue. Francis Mauigoa popped up this weekend with a back issue that one GM in the AFC thinks could keep him out his entire rookie year. And he's a 300-pound guy who relies on power a lot with a back issue. That would give me more concern than Jordyn Tyson's injuries, which tend to just be bad luck injuries for him. And then we talk about Jordyn Tyson as a receiver. This is somebody who is coached by Hines Ward, somebody who Hines Ward gives a cosign to. If you heard Hines Ward talk about Jordyn Tyson, I'll play that clip for you.
Hell yeah. You know what, man, wherever God wants him to be, man, it's going to be. And of course, I'm a little biased, of course, the black and gold, but I'm excited just to see whatever. And I tell all the scouts and all the teams, whatever team end up drafting him, you're going to get a winner. You know, I know the work that he's put into it. You know, I chuckle sometimes because, you know, they try to write the narrative. He's not physical and stuff like that. And and JT would call me from time to time like, man, that's crazy. I say, listen, Jay, that's one thing about the NFL. It's a business. Anything that they can do to get you at a cheaper rate, trust me, they're going to do it. They're going to talk bad about you, and I can guarantee you they would love to draft you in as lowest, as cheap as possible that they can get you. I mean, he's a first-round talent. He's going to be fine. You know, injury-wise, listen, there's a fluke injury with his collarbone. Like 3 guys fell on him. The hamstring, that happens at the wide receiver position. But, you know, what I found out about JT and the gutsy that he had to come back, the resiliency to come back in that Texas Tech game when he popped it in the third quarter, I tried to pull him out. And a lot of scouts didn't know the story. I was like, no, man, it ain't worth it. He said, Coach, man, I love my brothers. I don't know what's going to happen. If this is going to be my last game, I want to do all I can, even if I can't run the route. And he single-handedly, on that last drive, led us down all the way and helped us win that game. And that's where I learned a lot about JT's toughness, of who he is as a person. It sounded a lot like myself as a player. I didn't want to come out of the game. So I don't know. People questioning JT's toughness and stuff, I just laugh at it because, you know, I've been with him on a day-to-day basis. I've seen him go through practice. I've seen him try to come back from injuries ahead of time. I mean, if we beat Texas in the bowl game, that the following week he's playing in that game. A lot of scouts didn't know that, you know. So I'm super excited about his opportunity. I can't wait to see what happens on draft weekend and for all our guys, not just JT. You know, I think we're bringing some some guys, some players here on our roster that can play at the next level. So I'm super excited to see where everybody ends up.
This is somebody who Hines Ward is praising his toughness. And if you know anything about Hines Ward, he's not just quick to give anybody that toughness check, right? He's praised the toughness of Jordyn Tyson. And when you look at Jordyn Tyson's career, the one thing that's super impressive to me is that he's been a productive wide receiver every year he's played college football. He was productive at Colorado, had a 100-plus yard game at Colorado, had multiple 100-plus yard games when he transferred to Arizona State his first year, got injured his second year at Arizona State, but was productive every time he got on the field, right? Like, he is consistently productive, consistently a reliable target, a reliable source of first downs, somebody who you will be surprised his man coverage production in 2024 is at the same rate as a Ted McMillan or a Jeremiah Smith. He has been super productive throughout his college career, and he's been productive every year of his college career. Some of these guys in this draft class are one-year wonders. That's not the case for Jordyn Tyson. Jordyn Tyson also a better run after catch guy, a better ball in his hand athlete than I think he gets credit for. Not the greatest 50-50 ball guy, but certainly some potential there in my opinion. He is a well-rounded prospect. He's the closest thing this year to Ted McMillan from a upside standpoint and from a prospect ability standpoint. I think he's going to be the guy that people are surprised goes off the board a lot earlier than maybe people are expecting. Maybe that I'm wrong on that. That's just my gut feeling here. He is the most talented wide receiver in this group, and he's the guy that I could see a wide variety of teams having him check a lot of boxes for. I wonder if the Browns would actually prefer Tyson as their number one wide receiver. I wouldn't be surprised to see that be the case. I think that he's kind of a nice middle between Carnell Tate and Makai Lemon. But let me talk about Makai Lemon, because that's my favorite wide receiver prospect in this class. He's not going to be the first wide receiver taken, but I think if I look back at this draft in 10 years and I go back to certain players, Makai Lemon's at the top of the list of guys that just the draft process completely overthought. He is the definition of a good football player, right? He's not going to test incredible. He doesn't have spectacular size, but his production has always been up to snuff, and he's productive in so many ways at the college level. Interestingly enough, Carnell Tate has kind of gotten the reputation as the best all-round prospect in this draft class. I think Carnell Tate is the best downfield home run hitter in this class. I think he's the best contested catch wide receiver in this class. And if you're a team that needs something like that and has the kind of quarterback play that can access the ceiling of a player like that, then Carnell Tate makes a lot of sense to be your number one wide receiver in this draft class. But if you're a team that's not sure about your wide receiver position and you just want somebody that you can put in your offense and be pretty confident that no matter who's at quarterback, you can get production out of, Makai Lemon is that guy. This is the best all-round receiver in the draft class, in my opinion. He's really, really good at a lot of things. I think what holds him back is the fact that because of his physical profile, it's hard for people to imagine that he goes from being really good at these things to elite at these things, right? With Carnell Tate at 6'2", 180 pounds, it's not hard to imagine him being an elite contested catch wide receiver. With Makai Lemon, despite the fact that his performance in college was very similar to some of the top contested catch wide receivers in this draft class, it's hard to imagine him being that in the NFL because he is 5'11", and he's not very big, and he's not very long, and he's not super, super athletic, right? He's not a bad athlete, mind you. He's just not supremely athletic or special in the athletic department. What I do think gets overlooked with Makai Lemon is that he's a special football player. And yeah, he doesn't wow you with any of his measurables, but what does wow you is his tape. His tape is spectacular. And here's what I mean by best all-rounder, right? Is he better than Carnell Tate at contested catches? No. Carnell Tate's clearly better than him at contested catches. But he's not dissimilar to Carnell Tate, right? Carnell Tate was 18 of 24 in contested catch situations. Makai Lemon was 15 of 25. Clearly below Carnell Tate, but not that far off from where Carnell Tate was. And I think it's pretty impressive when you consider, again, he's not 6'2", right? He doesn't have an incredible vertical, right? He is not that level of athlete, but he's still maintaining that level of production. As a yak guy, I think he's a super underrated yards after catch wide receiver. I think he's the best yards after catch wide receiver in this draft class. His production backs that up. If we compare him to what the consensus best yard after catch wide receiver, Casey Concepcion, he clearly proves that with his production, right? Casey Concepcion over the last 2 years, 705 yak yards with 21 forced missed tackles. Makai Lemon over the last 2 years, 850 yak yards with 29 forced missed tackles. Look at how green his route tree is by success rate. This guy wins with literally every route that he brings to the table outside the 9. He had a 74.6% success rate, which was 85th percentile versus man coverage, which is super high. He was at 82.9% success rate in zone, which is 79th percentile. So this is somebody who's super smart, super heady. This is what makes him quarterback friendly. If Shedeur leaves the pocket, he has Makai Lemon there. Makai Lemon is going to be smart enough and patient enough and good enough at contested catches to be able to find Shedeur and make things happen, right? Like if you're wondering, hey, who's going to be the best with Shedeur's scramble ability if he's the quarterback, or Deshaun Watson's, playmaking ability, right? If he ends up being the starting quarterback, Makai Lemon fits that because he can separate in man coverage, which when you're in scramble drill, zone coverage turns into man coverage, but he has that IQ that you need to be able to understand where the soft spots are from what the coverage is broken down into, where your relation is to the quarterback, and then the contested catch ability to be able to make those kind of catches that are oftentimes contested when you're in a scramble drill situation. Go watch how he played with Jordyn Maeva, who was off script, late, out of the pocket all the time at USC, but Makai Lemon was able to make him right in so many scenarios. He is a safety blanket at wide receiver, somebody who can make a young quarterback's life a lot easier, because even if you miss the progression, you can still find Makai Lemon because he is going to be able to find you if you get into the scramble drill. I got more to say about this wide receiver class, but first I got to thank my sponsor, PrizePicks. I think one of the big questions left with Makai Lemon is, can he be elite, right? You're taking a wide receiver at 6, you expect him to be elite, and that's the tough part, right? I can't expect Makai Lemon to be an elite wide receiver. Do I think it's possible that it happens? Sure. I mean, Puka Nacua has become an elite wide receiver with similar athletic downfalls. Well, not downfalls, but similar athletic shortcomings and physical shortcomings to Makai Lemon. You can point to Amon-Ra St. Brown, who had similar measurements to Makai Lemon coming out of USC. You know, like guys his size with his limitations, Antonio Brown, right? Not even the fastest long speed guy, just super quick, great route runner. He became elite at his position, a Hall of Fame caliber player. I don't know if he ever gets in, but certainly a Hall of Fame caliber player. And anybody who watched the Browns in the 2010 knows that about Antonio Brown. It's very possible that Makai Lemon could be that level of an outlier, but you would be betting on him to be an outlier, which is what makes people naturally uncomfortable with the idea of drafting him at number 6. But in a draft class where you can point out a lot of flaws when it comes to what usually goes at number 6 versus what pick you would make at number 6 in this year's draft, no matter what the position is, that tends to matter less and less, right? If the Browns are dead set at wide receiver, at 6, you got to consider Makai Lemon for that pick, because it might be the case that him being, such a good football player ends up being the most important trait at the end of the day. I think that's going to be a problem the Browns are going to have to deal with whoever they pick at 6 if they stay at 6, which is prospect-wise, the expectations for a 6 overall pick are going to be kind of steep for whoever they draft, whether it be Carnell Tate, Jordyn Tyson, Monroe Freeling, Makai Lemon, even somebody like Ruben Bain, or Caleb Downs, who plays a position that doesn't traditionally go that high in the draft, right? The expectations traditionally for what you get at 6, they're not going to really match what you're getting there. So it's just going to be that kind of situation for the Browns if they draft at 6 anyways. And if that's the case, I don't really think they should avoid Makai Lemon. Now, I will say with this caveat, for any player that I talk about, my research about a player can only go so far, because there are some things that you have to figure out, right? This is the lesson I learned with Perion Winfrey. Ultimately, my study of this player is based on what I've seen from 10,000 feet away, right? His tape, his games, what he's produced at in the college football level, what he's done so far. What I can't get a read on from 10,000 feet away is how he comes off in interviews, how he comes off to the coaching staff, how people feel about him as a person, how his coaches felt about him as a person, what his work ethic is. All of these things can change drastically how you feel about a guy like Makai Lemon, who physically is kind of on the margins there when it comes to what you would typically look for athletically and size-wise for a wide receiver. So by no means am I saying this is a slam dunk. I'm just saying from what I can tell on the field, right, without being able to interview him and be able to get a glimpse of what his family life is like and how he interacts with his teammates and how he interacts with his coaches, without knowing any of that, I can look at the game tape and say to myself, if that stuff is not a problem for Makai Lemon and it's just about the game tape for him, I see a lot of positives in this guy as a prospect for the Browns. And I hear people say crazy stuff about Makai Lemon, like they wouldn't want the Browns to take him at 24. I think that's batshit insane if you don't think the Browns should take Makai Lemon at 24. If that's a blessing, if the Browns get the opportunity. That's like when Luther Burton fell to the Bears at like 36 or something last year, right? If Makai Lemon falls to you at 24, you run up and you take that opportunity and you don't look back. But I really think we're really not talking enough about just the thoroughness of his game and what he can provide, especially to what the Browns room is and will be in the future. Because even if they give up on this current quarterback room and they get another skill set in, Makai Lemon's going to fit that skill set still, because he just has so much he can offer at the wide receiver from a skill standpoint. When I talked to Tyvis Powell and I asked him who would be the hardest guy to cover in this class, he said it was Makai Lemon. He used to play corner in the NFL. He knows what he's talking about there, right? Like, this is a great route runner, somebody who's patient in zone, somebody who can win, still impress despite being undersized, somebody who can win with contested catch, tough as hell, physical, and great with the ball in his hands, underrated as a yak wide receiver. That sounds like a guy you want on your football team to me. Since I'm talking about these two, and I'm making the argument for, entertaining the possibility of taking one of these guys over or instead of Carnell Tate, people are going to think I'm hating on Carnell Tate. I don't hate Carnell Tate. I think Carnell Tate makes sense for a different situation than what the Cleveland Browns are in, because ultimately I think Carnell Tate's game is a bit more reliant when it comes to its success on who's playing quarterback for him. And when you're in a situation like Cleveland and you don't know what your future is going to be at quarterback, you probably should stay away from wide receiver prospects like Carnell Tate, because it is very possible you end up in a situation where the quarterback that you're ready to commit to doesn't really make sense with Carnell Tate, and you're going to have to make a move off of Carnell Tate to get somebody who does make more sense in the future, right? I would rather go with guys that I know no matter who I bring in over the next 5 years, I'm going to be able to be successful with or find a way to get the most out of those guys with what I have on the roster at quarterback, whether I find the answer or not. Makai Lemon fits that bill more to me. Less so Jalen Tyson fits that bill, but less so Jordyn Tyson, but still more so than like Carnell Tate, in my opinion. I think of Carnell, I said this a ton of times, if he goes somewhere like Washington, that's a great fit for him. That's an amazing fit. I think that's going to work out tremendously for him. If Carnell goes somewhere like Arizona, it could look a lot like how Marvin Harrison Jr. has looked in Arizona. And I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is an interesting case to look at because Marvin Harrison was 3 times the prospect that Carnell Tate was coming out of college, right? Like, I don't think people would disagree with me on that. Marvin Harrison was a spectacular, one of the best wide receiver prospects we have seen. But he's not been ultra productive in Arizona. And I think a huge part of that is the quarterback play that he's had in Arizona simply can't access the skill set that Marvin brings to the table. I think if he had a quarterback that made more sense for his skill set, I've argued somebody like Fernando Mendoza, right? I think has the perfect skill set for Marv, right? Marv is really good at those toe tap catches, really good at finding the ball, tracking it over his back shoulder. Somebody who maybe not the best separator, needs a more accurate and a quarterback who's going to process the middle of the field quickly. I think that's where Marv can win. And I think if Marv played with somebody like that, you would see him get 1,300 yards. But since he's been stuck on the Arizona Cardinals, he's stuck as this 600-yard wide receiver, and it's been a pretty frustrating existence for him, right? You get him the right kind of quarterback, you get a different wide receiver out of Marvin Harrison Jr. That's kind of the same situation in, obviously, Carnell's not the prospect that Marv is. So it would be, I think, worse than what it's been for Marv if he goes to the wrong situation. And that's kind of what I'm saying. It's nothing about Carnell as a prospect, and it's more about the ideal of fit. Fit matters in football, especially at the offensive position, especially at wide receiver. And I just don't know if where the Browns are makes a ton of sense for what Carnell Tate is and what he isn't as a wide receiver. But I do think you can make a better argument for Jordyn Tyson, for Makai Lemon. Now, can you make a loud enough argument for those guys at 6? Traditionally, if this was a deeper class, probably not. But in a class like this that's not super deep, maybe. You know, it wouldn't be the biggest shock in the world to me. I'm sure it would shock people in Browns Twitter because people have kind of conditioned themselves to think that like Jordyn Tyson's going to fall to like 30. I don't think that's going to happen. Or Makai Lemon's going to fall, which could happen just because people might overthink the fact that he's not big. But I think if you draft Makai Lemon in the top 10, you're going to get good enough production to where you're okay with what you got relative to what was in that draft class. But that's something I wanted to talk about. I think that we haven't really discussed Jordyn Tyson, and especially Makai Lemon has kind of gotten lost in the radar. I think we have not talked about how much sense Makai Lemon makes for this team. And instead it's been focused on other positions. And I just wanted to make the argument for Makai in the video today. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.